In the ancient hills of Judea, during a time when kings hunted kings, and trust was a currency few could afford, one woman stood between rage and ruin. This is the wilderness years when David, anointed but not yet crowned, lives as a fugitive. King Saul's jealousy has turned him into a predator and David into prey. But even in exile, David remains honorable. He protects villages, guards flocks, watches over shepherds who graze their animals in dangerous terrain. He asks for nothing in return until the day he does. And when respect is met with contempt, 400 armed men begin marching toward vengeance. Blood is about to be shed. Innocent lives are about to be lost. But one woman with neither sword nor title will step into the path of violence and speak words that change everything. Her name is Abigail. And her story reminds us that sometimes the difference between war and peace rests in one person's courage. Life in the wilderness. The wilderness of Pan is unforgiving. Rocks and thorn bushes stretch as far as the eye can see. Dust clings to your skin like a second layer. Heat bakes the earth by day, turning the ground into something that burns through sandals. At night, the cold descends with a sharpness that cuts through cloaks and blankets. This is where David and his men make camp. 600 warriors living in caves and ravines, moving from place to place, always one step ahead of Saul's army. They are not bandits. They do not raid or steal. Instead, they become an unofficial militia, a protective wall around the region of Maon and Carmel. Local shepherds come to recognize them. Young boys tending flocks wave when they see David's men on the ridges. Flocks graze safely because David's men patrol the hills. Caravans pass through without losing goods to thieves. It is an unspoken arrangement built not on contracts, but on honor. David provides security. The people of the land benefit. And in a time of chaos, when royal authority is fractured and violence lurks around every corner, this mutual respect becomes a lifeline for everyone involved. The men who follow David are not mere soldiers. They are outcasts, debtors, the distressed and discontented. Men who had nothing to lose and everything to gain by following someone who treated them with dignity. David gives them purpose. He trains them, teaches them, transforms them from desperate refugees into a disciplined fighting force. They camp under the stars. They share meager rations. They watch each other's backs. And slowly, in the harshness of the wilderness, they become brothers. But survival in the wilderness requires more than honor and brotherhood. It requires provision. Bread, water, meat, oil, the basics of existence that cannot be conjured from rocks and sand. David's men hunt when they can. They gather what the land offers, but 600 mouths are many to feed. And during sheep shearing season, when landowners celebrate their profits with feasting and generosity, when the custom of hospitality runs thick through every household, David decides it is time to ask for what is fair, not a demand, not a threat, simply a respectful request from one man to another, from protector to protected. It is reasonable, it is customary, and it is about to go terribly wrong. The wealthy man named Nabal. His name is Nabal, and in Hebrew the name itself is a warning. It means fool. Whether his parents knew what they were naming him, whether they saw something in the infant's eyes that told them this child would grow into foolishness, or whether the title grew to fit the man over the years, we do not know. But this much is certain. Nabal is wealthy, harsh, and proud. He owns 3,000 sheep and 1,000 goats. His estate sprawls across the fertile region of Carmel, a place of rolling hills and green pastures, where water flows and vegetation grows thick. Workers tend his fields from dawn until dusk. Servants manage his flocks with meticulous care. Shepherds count every lamb, every kid, ensuring that Nabal's wealth continues to multiply. He lives in abundance. His storehouses overflow with grain. His wine cellars are stocked. His tables groan under the weight of food. Yet despite all this prosperity, his heart is clenched tight like a fist that refuses to open. He is known throughout the region for being difficult, surly in speech, quick to insult, slow to show kindness. When workers ask for fair wages, he haggles and complains. When travelers seek hospitality, he turns them away. When neighbors need help, he finds excuses. His wealth has made him arrogant. His power has made him cruel. And his foolishness has made him dangerous, not just to others, but to himself. But Nabal has one redeeming feature, though he does not deserve her. Her name is Abigail. She is his wife. And where Nabal is foolish, Abigail is wise. Where he is harsh, she is graceful. Where he speaks without thinking, she weighs every word before it leaves her mouth. The servants respect her. When Nabal rages, they come to Abigail for calm counsel. When disputes arise, they trust her judgment. The community knows her. Women seek her advice. Elders nod approvingly when her name is mentioned. She moves through life with a quiet dignity that stands in stark contrast to her husband's loud foolishness. How such a woman came to marry such a man, we're not told. Perhaps it was an arranged marriage, a business transaction between families seeking alliance. Perhaps Nabal was different once before wealth corrupted him. Or perhaps Abigail simply made the best of circumstances beyond her control, choosing grace in a situation that offered little of it. Whatever the reason, she endures. She manages the household with skill. She treats servants with kindness. She navigates her husband's moods with patience born of long practice. And soon, very soon, the entire course of this story will hinge on her intelligence, her courage, and her willingness to risk everything to do what is right. A reasonable request. Sheep shearing season has arrived. It is one of the great celebrations of the agricultural year, a time when months of labor finally yield profit. The wool is thick and valuable. Landowners calculate their earnings and find themselves pleased. It is a time of feasting and joy. Landowners throw elaborate banquets. Workers receive bonuses, extra portions of food and wine. Travelers and neighbors are welcomed with open arms and generous tables. Music fills the air. Laughter echoes across the fields. Children run and play while adults recline in the shade, enjoying the fruits of their labor. Hospitality is not just custom during the season, it is expected. It is the social glue that holds communities together in a volatile world. To refuse hospitality during sheep shearing is not merely rude. It is a violation of the deepest cultural norms. It marks a person as selfish, untrustworthy, outside the bonds of civilized society. Everyone knows this. Everyone follows this except fools. David, camped nearby with his men, knows this tradition well. He has spent months, perhaps even a full year, ensuring that Nabal's flocks were protected. His men never stole a single lamb, never harassed the shepherds, never demanded payment or threatened violence. They were a wall around Nabal's wealth, standing between his prosperity and the bandits, raiders, and wild animals that prowled the wilderness. And Nabal never had to ask for this protection, never had to negotiate terms, never had to pay tribute. It was simply given freely as an act of honor between men sharing the same land. So David sends 10 young men to Nabal's estate. He chooses them carefully, polite young men, well-spoken men who will represent him with dignity. He instructs them in exactly what to say. The message they carry is respectful, humble even. They are to greet Nabal with peace. They are to acknowledge the joyful season. They are to remind him gently of the protection his shepherds received. How David's men were a wall around them both day and night. How nothing was stolen or lost while they were in the fields. They are to mention the season of celebration, the abundance that Nul now enjoys. And then they are to make a simple request. Share your abundance with those who guarded it. Give what you see fit, whatever seems good to you. Not a demand, not a price, just an invitation to participate in the custom of generosity that defines the season. The young men traveled to Nabal's estate, They find him in the midst of his celebration, surrounded by servants and food and wine. They approach respectfully. They deliver David's message word for word, exactly as instructed, and then they wait for the response. It is reasonable. It is customary. It is fair. Every shepherd within earshot knows this. Every servant listening knows this. But fairness means nothing to a fool. The insult Nabal listens to David's messengers, and then he sneers. His face twists with contempt. His response is sharp, dismissive, dripping with mockery. He raises his voice so others can hear, making sure everyone present witnesses his rejection. "Who is David?" he asks scornfully. "Who is the son of Jesse?" The land is full of servants running away from their masters these days. Why should I take my bread and water and the meat I've slaughtered for my shearers and give it to men coming from who knows where? The insult cuts on multiple levels, each one sharper than the last. First, Nabal pretends not to know who David is, though everyone in the region knows the name of Saul's greatest warrior, the young man who killed Goliath, the anointed future king. To claim ignorance is to claim David is beneath notice, and nobody not worth remembering. Second, he calls David a runaway servant, a fugitive slave with no authority and no worth, comparing him to common criminals and deserters. Third, he refuses the request entirely, as if the months of protection meant nothing. As if the safety of his shepherds and the security of his flocks were accidents of fortune, rather than the direct result of David's intervention. The messengers stand in stunned silence. Servants listening nearby avert their eyes, knowing trouble is coming. Even in Nabal's own household, people understand he has crossed a line. But Nabal does not care. He waves his hand, dismissively, and returns to his feast, laughing with his companions, perhaps making further jokes at David's expense. The messengers have no choice but to leave. They do not argue. They do not threaten. They simply turn and walk away, carrying the weight of the insult back to their leader. The journey back to David's camp feels longer than it did coming. Young men rehearse in their minds how to deliver this news. How do you tell a warrior that he has been publicly mocked? How do you explain to 600 armed men that their months of service have been dismissed as worthless? They do not need to worry about the explanation. When they arrive and repeat Nabal's words, the message is clear. David has been humiliated. His honor has been trampled. His good faith has been thrown back in his face. And in the ancient world, honor is not a luxury. It is survival. Without it, respect dissolves. Loyalty fractures. Authority crumbles. Men stop following. Alliances break. Enemies grow bold. David knows all this, and David does not hesitate. He gives the order. Strap on your swords. David's fury. 400 men arm themselves. Swords are drawn from sheath with a distinctive sound of metal on leather. Faces harden into expressions carved from stone. Conversations cease. The camp transforms from a resting place into a war party in moments. David leads them toward Nabal's estate, and his mind is made up. There is no debate, no counsel, no second thoughts. He swears an oath before God, invoking the Lord's name as witness to his vow. By morning, every male in Nabal's household will be dead. Not just Nabal, everyone. Servants, workers, even boys who have done nothing wrong. Total destruction. This is not just anger. This is exhaustion turned to rage. David has been running for years, hiding in caves, sleeping in the open, watching his back every moment of every day, living in constant danger. Saul's army hunts him relentlessly. Spies track his movements. The trails come from unexpected places. He cannot rest, cannot settle, cannot build anything resembling a normal life. And through it all, he has remained honorable. He has protected the innocent, refused to harm Saul, even when he had the perfect opportunity, even when his own men urged him to strike. He has waited on God's timing, trusted in God's promise, held himself to a higher standard, even when no one would have blamed him for taking what he could by force. But now, after months of service, after protecting Nabal's wealth without asking for anything in return, after acting with integrity and honor, he is mocked, called a nobody, a runaway slave, dismissed like a beggar unworthy of scraps. The humiliation is unbearable. It is not just personal offense, it is an attack on everything he has tried to build. If word spreads that David can be insulted without consequence, his authority evaporates. His men will question whether following him is wise. Other landowners will refuse to deal with him. His enemies will grow emboldened. The carefully constructed network of respect and mutual benefit that keeps his company alive in the wilderness will collapse. So David decides if respect will not be given, justice will be taken. If honor cannot be preserved through peace, it will be preserved through violence. 200 men will stay behind to guard the camp and supplies. 400 will march with him. It is more than enough. Nabal's household has servants and shepherds, not soldiers. The outcome is not in question. The only question is how much blood will be spilled. The march begins. Dust rises behind 400 pairs of boots. Swords gleam in the fading light of afternoon. Men check their weapons, adjust their belts, set their jaws. They do not question the order. They trust David. If he says justice requires this, they believe him. In a few hours, Noble's estate will run red. Screams will fill the air. A wealthy man's foolishness will cost dozens of innocent people their lives unless someone intervenes, unless someone steps between rage and ruin, unless one person has the courage to speak truth to power at the exact moment it is needed most. Abigail learns the truth. One of Nabal's servants runs to Abigail. His name is not recorded, but his terror is evident in every word. He is young, perhaps, or perhaps just wise enough to see what is coming. He finds Abigail in the household, away from the noise of Nabal's feast. He speaks quickly, urgently, words tumbling over each other in his haste to make her understand. David sent messengers to greet our master from the wilderness, he says, but Nell hurled insults at them. Yet these men were very good to us. They did not mistreat us, and the whole time we were out in the fields near them, nothing was missing. Night and day they were a wall around us. The entire time we were herding our sheep near them. The servant continues, his voice rising with fear. Now disaster is hanging over our master and his whole household. He's such a wicked man that no one can talk to him. The servant does not say this lightly. Calling your master wicked to his wife is a dangerous move, the kind of honesty that only desperation produces. But the young man knows that Abigail is different. She listens, she acts. She cares about the people in this household, not just the wealth and status. And right now, everyone's life depends on her. Abigail asks sharp questions. What exactly did Nabal say? When did the messengers leave? How many men does David have? The servant answers as best he can. He tells her about the insult, the mockery, the complete dismissal. He tells her that David's men are armed and disciplined, that there are hundreds of them, that they have been camped nearby for months. He tells her that if they come, there will be no negotiation, no mercy. This is not a raid for supplies. This is vengeance, and vengeance does not count the innocent among the guilty. Abigail understands immediately. Her husband's pride has just signed a death sentence, not just for himself, for everyone. The servants who had nothing to do with the insult, the workers who simply tend the flocks, the young boys who carry water and sweep floors, her own life. When David arrives, no one will be spared. The custom is clear. When a household offends beyond measure, the entire household pays the price. It is brutal. It is ancient, and it is coming. But Abigail does not panic. She does not weep or wring her hands or curse her fate. She does not waste time trying to talk sense into Nabal, who is drunk and celebrating and would never listen anyway. She does not freeze in fear or despair. Instead, she acts immediately, decisively, without asking her husband's permission, without consulting the elders, without waiting to see if maybe somehow things might work out on their own. She knows they will not, and she knows that if anyone is going to stop this, it will have to be her. The secret intervention, Abigail moves with precision born of intelligence and experience. She orders her servants to gather provisions, and she does not ask for small amounts. 200 loaves of bread, 2 skins of wine, 5 dressed sheep already butchered and prepared, ready to roast, 5 seahs of roasted grain, a measurement that equals roughly 13 gallons, 100 cakes of raisins pressed and sweet, 200 cakes of pressed figs. It is a feast, more than a feast. It is a gesture of profound respect, the kind of generosity that sheep shearing season demands, the kind of gift that says, you are valued, you are honored, your service matters. The servants move quickly. They understand the urgency even if they do not know all the details. Bread is gathered from storerooms, wineskins are filled, sheep are brought from where they hang in the cool shade, grain is measured, raisins and figs are packed carefully. Everything is loaded onto donkeys, animal after animal bearing the weight of reconciliation. Abigail tells her servants clearly, go on ahead of me. I will follow you. She does not tell them why. She does not need to. They trust her. She does not tell Nabal. There is no time for debate, and even if there were time, he would refuse. His pride would not allow it. He would say David deserves nothing. He would forbid the gift. He would rather die than admit he was wrong. So Abigail makes the decision herself. She takes responsibility. She uses the household's resources without permission. In doing so, she risks her husband's anger, his possible retaliation. But she has calculated the risks. Nabal's anger she can endure. David's sword she cannot. She mounts her own donkey and follows her servants down the path. The sun is setting now, painting the hills in shades of gold and crimson. Shadows stretch long across the valley. The air begins to cool. Somewhere ahead, David and his men are already on the move. 400 warriors descending through the wilderness. Swords ready, hearts hardened, minds fixed on justice as they understand it. Abigail rides to meet them, carrying peace offerings into the path of war, carrying words not yet spoken, but already forming in her mind, carrying the weight of an entire household survival on her shoulders. She does not know if it will work. She does not know if David will listen, but she knows she has to try, because sometimes courage is not the absence of fear. It is acting in spite of it. It is stepping forward when every instinct screams to run. It is speaking when silence would be safer. And Abigail is about to demonstrate courage that will echo through centuries. The encounter. Abigail sees them first. 400 armed men descending through a ravine. Their silhouettes dark against the dying light. Swords at their sides, faces grim, moving with the purposeful rhythm of men who know exactly what they intend to do. David is at the front, his jaw set, his eyes fixed on the path ahead. This is the man who killed Goliath, the man who has survived against impossible odds, the man who will one day be the greatest king Israel has ever known. But right now, he is simply a man consumed by rage, moments away from committing an act he can never undo. Abigail dismounts quickly. She does not wait for formal greetings or proper introductions. There is no time for protocol. She falls to the ground before David, her face in the dust, her body prostrate in the ancient posture of complete humility and total surrender. It is a gesture that cannot be ignored, that demands attention, and that communicates respect at the deepest possible level. David stops. His men stop. Everyone stares at this woman lying in the road. And then Abigail speaks. Her words are careful, chosen with precision, respectful, acknowledging David's authority and position, but also bold, unafraid to speak hard truths. Pardon your servant, my lord, she begins, and let me speak to you. Hear what your servant has to say. Please pay no attention to that wicked man, Nabal. He's just like his name. His name means fool, and folly goes with him. As for me, your servant, I did not see the men my Lord sent. With these opening words, Abigail accomplishes several things at once. She separates herself from Nabal's insult while acknowledging it happened. She takes responsibility as a member of the household without claiming credit for the offense. So she calls her own husband wicked and foolish, a stunning admission that validates David's anger while simultaneously diffusing it. She is saying, "You're right to be angry. The insult was real and wrong, but let me offer you something better than vengeance." She continues, her voice steady and clear. "And now, my lord, as surely as the Lord your God lives, and as you live, since the Lord has kept you from bloodshed and from avenging yourself with your own hands, may your enemies and all who are intent on harming my lord be like Nabal." This is brilliant rhetoric. She is reframing the entire situation. David has not yet killed anyone. He has been kept from bloodshed, not by weakness, but by divine intervention. And she is including herself in that intervention, positioning herself as an instrument of God's protection of David from his own worst impulses. She gestures to the provisions her servants have brought. "And let this gift, which your servant has brought to my Lord, be given to the men who follow you." She calls it a gift, not payment or tribute. She honors David by honoring his men. She acknowledges their service and worth. Then she makes her most important point. "Please forgive your servant's presumption. The Lord your God will certainly make a lasting dynasty for my Lord, because you fight the Lord's battles, and no wrongdoing will be found in you as long as you live." Here is the heart of her argument. "David, you're destined for greatness. God has promised you a kingdom. You fight the Lord's battles. Your life has been marked by righteousness. Do not stain that record now. Do not let one foolish man's insult turn you into a killer of the innocent." She presses further. "Even though someone is pursuing you to take your life, the life of my Lord will be bound securely in the bundle of the living by the Lord your God. But the lives of your enemies he will hurl away as from the pocket of a sling." It is a beautiful image, and it reminds David of his own story. The sling, the stone, Goliath falling, God's deliverance. Abigail is saying, remember who you are. Remember how God has protected you. Trust him to deal with your enemies. You do not need to take vengeance into your own hands. And then she delivers her final, most powerful appeal. "When the Lord has fulfilled for my Lord every good thing he promised concerning him, and has appointed him ruler over Israel, my Lord will not have on his conscience the staggering burden of needless bloodshed or of having avenged himself. And when the Lord your God has brought my Lord success, remember your servant." This is masterful. She is asking David to think about his future self. "Imagine yourself as king," she's saying. Imagine looking back on this moment. She's appealing to his destiny, his integrity, his relationship with God, and his own future peace of mind. And she is doing it all while kneeling in the dust, speaking with respect, never once attacking David or questioning his authority. She's offering him a way out, a path to preserve his honor without shedding innocent blood, a chance to be the man God has called him to be. David's change of heart. David listens. And as he listens, something shifts. The rage that burned white-hot moments ago begins to cool. The tunnel vision that saw only vengeance begins to widen. He looks at this woman kneeling before him, wise, courageous, unafraid to speak truth, even to an armed warrior on the edge of violence. And he realizes several things at once. She is right. Killing Nabal's household would not restore his honor. It would only tarnish his soul. It would mark him as a man who murders the innocent because of one man's offense. It would haunt him. It would undermine everything he has tried to build. It would be exactly the kind of reckless, dishonorable act that Saul would commit. And David has sworn again and again that he will not become like Saul. He also realizes that Abigail has just saved him from himself. He was moments away from a terrible mistake. His hand was on the sword, his feet were on the path, his mind was made up, and if not for this woman's intervention, he would have committed an act he could never undo, taken lives he could never restore, stained his conscience in ways that would last forever. She has given him the gift of stopping, the gift of choosing a better path, the gift of restraint. And David, to his great credit, recognizes this immediately. He speaks, and his voice has changed. The fury is gone. In its place is something closer to war. Praise be to the Lord, the God of Israel, who has sent you today to meet me. He acknowledges divine providence first. This was not coincidence. This was God's intervention. May you be blessed for your good judgment and for keeping me from bloodshed this day and from avenging myself with my own hands. He blesses Abigail directly, honoring her wisdom and courage. Then he makes a sobering admission. Otherwise, as surely as the Lord lives, the God of Israel who has kept me from harming you, if you had not come quickly to meet me, not one male belonging to Nabal would have been left alive by daybreak. He is being completely honest. He was going to kill everyone. She stopped him. He does not pretend he was bluffing. He does not downplay the danger. He acknowledges exactly what would have happened and exactly what she prevented. David accepts her gifts. He receives them not as tribute from a subordinate, but as a blessing from an equal, a gesture of respect between honorable people. Go home in peace, he tells her. I have heard your words and granted your request. There will be no violence, no bloodshed, no vengeance. The swords are sheathed. The march stops. 400 men turn back toward their camp, still armed, but no longer hunting. One woman's words have changed the course of history. One woman's courage has saved dozens of lives. One woman's wisdom has protected a future king from becoming a murderer. And everyone present understands they have just witnessed something extraordinary, Nabal's fate. Abigail returns home as the sun rises, painting the eastern sky in shades of pink and gold. Inside Nabal's house, the feast is still underway. Music plays, laughter echoes. Nabal is drunk, celebrating like a king, surrounded by food and wine, and sickens who laugh at his jokes and agree with his every word. He has no idea how close he came to death. No idea that 400 armed men were hours away from slaughtering everyone in his household. No idea that his wife just saved his life. He celebrates his wealth, his power, his cleverness, completely oblivious to the reality of his situation. Abigail says nothing. She does not interrupt the feast, does not pull Nabal aside, does not try to explain what happened. There is no point. He's too drunk to understand, too proud to care, too foolish to learn. So she waits. She tends to her duties. She oversees the servants. She watches the celebration with patient eyes, knowing what she knows, carrying the weight of it in silence. When morning comes and Nabal is sober, when the wine is worn off and his head is clear, Abigail tells him everything. She describes David's messengers and his insult, David's fury and his oath. 400 armed men marching toward their home. Her intervention, the provision she gave, the conversation in the road, the change of heart, the narrow escape. She lays it all out clearly, sparing no detail. And this is what you did. This is what nearly happened. This is how close we came to complete destruction. Nabal's reaction is immediate and devastating. The text says his heart failed him and he became like a stone. Some translations say his heart died within him. Others say he suffered a stroke. Medical scholars suggest various possibilities: a heart attack, a stroke, a complete mental breakdown. Whatever the physiological cause, the result is the same. Nabal collapses, his face drains of color, his body goes rigid. He cannot speak, cannot move, cannot even scream. Whether it is fear, shock, rage, or guilt that triggers this reaction, we do not know. Perhaps it is the sudden realization of his own mortality. The knowledge that his foolishness nearly destroyed everything. The terror of understanding how thin the margin was between life and death. Or perhaps it is simply the divine hand of judgment. The text records it clearly. About 10 days later, the Lord struck Nabal and he died. No human hand took his life. David did not send assassins. Abigail did not poison him. The servants did not revolt. God himself acted. The judgment was swift and final. Nell's pride, his cruelty, his foolishness, all the accumulated weight of his wickedness brought about his end. He dies in his own home, surrounded by the wealth that meant everything to him and protected him from nothing. The manner of Nabal's death is significant. He is not killed by enemies, not struck down in battle, not murdered by those he wronged. He simply dies, removed from the story as efficiently as a problem solved. There is a principle woven through Scripture. Vengeance belongs to God. Do not repay evil for evil. Leave room for God's wrath. Trust that justice will be done, if not by human hands, then by divine ones. David nearly violated this principle. He nearly took vengeance into his own hands, but Abigail stopped him, and then God demonstrated why restraint was the right choice. The wicked man died anyway, but David's hands remained clean. His conscience remained clear, and the lesson was unmistakable. Patience and righteousness are rewarded. Foolishness and wickedness bring their own destruction. Abigail's new beginning. When David hears that Nabal is dead, he does not celebrate the man's demise. Instead, he praises God. Blessed be the Lord, he says, who has upheld my cause against Nabal for treating me with contempt. He has kept his servant from doing wrong and has brought Nabal's wrongdoing down on his own head. David recognizes the divine pattern in these events. He was wronged. He nearly responded wrongly. He was stopped. And justice came anyway in God's timing, in God's way. This is vindication without violence, honor restored without bloodshed. And then David thinks of Abigail, her wisdom, her courage, her faith, the way she spoke truth without fear, the way she saw what was right and acted on it regardless of personal cost, the way she saved him from himself. He sends messengers to her with a proposal, not a command, not a summons, a request. His servants go to Carmel and say to Abigail, David has sent us to you to take you to become his wife. In the ancient world, this is an honor of the highest order. David is not just any man. He is the anointed future king of Israel, the warrior who killed Goliath, the leader whom people sing about in the streets. To be chosen as his wife is to be elevated to royalty. But David is not offering this marriage merely as a reward or as political strategy. He genuinely respects Abigail. He values her judgment. He wants her wisdom as part of his life. And perhaps after years of running and fighting and surviving, he also wants her gentleness, her grace, her steadying presence. Abigail does not hesitate. She does not play coy or negotiate terms. She does not ask for time to think about it. She bows down with her face to the ground and says, I am your servant and am ready to serve you and wash the feet of my Lord's servants. Even in accepting this incredible honor, she maintains her characteristic humility. She sees herself as a servant, not despite her intelligence and courage, but because of her understanding of what true greatness looks like. Greatness is not about demanding service. It is about offering it. She quickly prepares to leave. She gathers 5 of her female servants to accompany her. She mounts her donkey and she goes with David's messengers to become his wife. The text records this transition simply without elaborate ceremony or description. But the significance is profound. Abigail moves from the household of a fool to the company of a future king. From a life constrained by her husband's wickedness to a life expanded by honor and purpose. From a situation where her wisdom was wasted on a man who would not listen to a partnership with a man who values what she has to offer. Though the Bible does not record many details of their life together, we know this. Abigail's story does not end in tragedy. It ends in honor, elevation, a new chapter. She's remembered not for her beauty, though she may have been beautiful, not for her wealth, though she came from wealth. She's remembered for wisdom and courage, for speaking truth at the right moment, for standing between destruction and mercy, for saving lives, for protecting a future king from his own worst impulses. Her name appears in the genealogies. Her story is told and retold. And centuries later, we still speak of Abigail with respect and admiration, recognizing in her something timeless and necessary: the courage to do what is right, even when it is dangerous, wisdom over wrath. The first great theme of this story is the power of wisdom to overcome wrath. And Abigail's calm reasoning stops bloodshed. She does not fight David with weapons. She does not match his anger with her own. She does not argue or accuse or defend her husband's actions. Instead, she speaks truth with respect. She acknowledges David's legitimate grievance. She validates his anger. And then she offers him something better than vengeance: the preservation of his integrity and his destiny. Proverbs 15:1 says, "A gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger." Abigail embodies this principle perfectly. Her words are soft but strong, humble but persuasive. She does not minimize the offense. She calls Nabal wicked and foolish, but she also appeals to David's better nature, to his relationship with God, to his future as king. She gives him perspective. She reminds him who he is and who he is meant to become. And in doing so, she transforms his rage into reflection. This is wisdom in action, not just knowledge or intelligence, but the ability to apply truth in ways that change outcomes. Wisdom knows when to speak and when to be silent. It knows how to frame difficult messages in ways that can be heard. It knows how to appeal to people's highest values rather than their lowest impulses. It knows how to offer dignity to everyone involved, even in situations of conflict and pain. The world often glorifies strength as the ability to dominate, to overpower, to force outcomes through superior force. But Abigail demonstrates a different kind of strength: the strength of restraint, the strength of patience, the strength of words carefully chosen and courageously spoken. She has no army, no weapons, no political power. All she has is wisdom and courage, and it is enough. It is more than enough. It changes everything. The power of intercession. The second great theme is the power of one person to stand in the gap. Abigail places herself between destruction and mercy. She does not cause the conflict. She's not responsible for Nabal's foolishness. She does not deserve the consequences that are about to fall on her household, but she steps into the gap anyway. She takes responsibility that is not hers to take. She risks herself to protect others. This is the heart of intercession. Intercession is about standing between judgment and grace. It is about speaking on behalf of those who cannot speak for themselves. It is about taking on the burden of reconciliation, even when you did not create the breach. Moses did this for Israel when God was ready to destroy them for the golden calf. Abraham did this for Sodom when he bargained with God to spare the righteous. And ultimately, Christ does this for all humanity, standing between us and the judgment we deserve, taking on himself the consequences of our sin. Abigail's intercession is a pale shadow of Christ, but it points in the same direction. She steps forward when others step back. She speaks when others are silent. She risks when others hide. And in doing so, she saves lives. Not just Nabal's life, though he is included, but the lives of servants and workers and children who had nothing to do with the offense. Innocent people who would have died simply because they were part of the household. This kind of intercession requires courage. It means putting yourself in a vulnerable position. Abigail kneels in the road before armed men. She could be killed in an instant. David could dismiss her words and proceed with his plan, but she trusts that there is still goodness in David that can be reached, still conscience that can be awakened, still openness to truth that makes the risk worth taking. And she is right. The call to intercession is still relevant today. We live in a world full of conflicts that need peacemakers, situations where someone needs to step forward and speak truth, moments where one person's courage can change the trajectory of events. It may not be as dramatic as stopping an army in the wilderness. It may be speaking up in a meeting when injustice is about to happen. It may be intervening in a family conflict before relationships are destroyed. It may be advocating for someone who has no voice, but the principle is the same. Sometimes God calls us to stand in the gap, to be the voice of wisdom and mercy in a moment that desperately needs both. Pride versus humility. The third great theme is the contrast between pride and humility and their radically different outcomes. Nabal's arrogance leads directly to his downfall. He mocks David because he cannot imagine consequences. He is too proud to show gratitude, too foolish to recognize danger, too convinced of his own importance to treat others with basic respect. His wealth has made him believe he is untouchable. His power has made him cruel, and his pride blinds him to reality. Proverbs 16:18 warns, "Pride goes before destruction, a haughty spirit before a fool." Nabal is the proof text for this proverb. His pride is not just an attitude, it is a death sentence. He insults the wrong person at the wrong time and refuses to acknowledge his error. Even when his wife intervenes and saves his life, his pride prevents him from learning. When he finally understands what happened, the shock kills him. His pride literally stops his heart. Abigail, in contrast, embodies humility, but her humility is not weakness or self-deprecation. It is strength under control. It is the ability to see clearly without the distortion of ego. She bows low before David, but this does not diminish her. It elevates her. She takes responsibility for her husband's offense, even though it is not her fault. She speaks with respect, even while speaking hard truths. She serves others without needing credit or recognition. And this humility leads to her elevation. And the biblical pattern is consistent. God opposes the proud but gives grace to the humble. Whoever exalts himself will be humbled, and whoever humbles himself will be exalted. We see this pattern throughout Scripture and throughout history. Pride leads to isolation, conflict, and eventually destruction. Humility leads to connection, peace, and honor. Nabal dies alone, struck down by his own foolishness. Abigail is honored, remembered, elevated to royalty. The contrast could not be more stark. This theme challenges our cultural assumptions about power and success. The world often teaches us to promote ourselves, to demand respect, to never show weakness. But Abigail demonstrates a different path. True strength is found in humility. True influence comes from serving others. True greatness is measured not by how many people you dominate, but by how many lives you improve. She wins the respect of a future king not by demanding it, but by demonstrating wisdom and character that cannot be ignored. Divine timing. The fourth great theme is divine timing, the way God orchestrates events with perfect precision. Abigail's intervention occurs at exactly the right moment. Not too early before David has left his camp. Not too late after blood has already been shed, but precisely when and where it is needed most. She meets David on the road between decision and action, between intention and consequence. This is not coincidence. This is providence. Scripture is full of these moments of perfect timing. Esther becomes queen just before Haman's plot to destroy the Jews. Moses is found by Pharaoh's daughter just when he would have drowned or been killed. Jesus enters Jerusalem on the exact day prophesied by Daniel, presenting himself as king at the appointed time. Again and again, we see God working through ordinary circumstances to accomplish extraordinary purposes. And the timing is always precise. Abigail did not know David was coming that specific day. She simply acted on the information she had as quickly as she could. But God knew. God knew when David would leave his camp. God knew which path he would take. God knew when Abigail would hear the news and how long it would take her to prepare provisions and ride out. And God orchestrated all of it so that two paths would intersect at exactly the moment needed to prevent tragedy. This should give us confidence in our own lives. When we face situations that seem impossible, when timing seems critical and we do not know what to do, we can trust that God is orchestrating events with precision we cannot see. Our job is not to control every variable or predict every outcome. Our job is to act faithfully with the information and opportunities we have, trusting that God will handle the timing and the results. For Abigail, this meant gathering provisions and riding out to meet David as soon as she learned what was happening. She did not know it would work. She did not have a guarantee of success, but she acted in faith, doing what was right and trusting God with the outcome. And God honored that faith by bringing her to David at exactly the right moment. The servant who warned her acted at the right time. Abigail prepared at the right speed. The donkeys traveled at the right pace. Everything aligned perfectly, not by chance, but by divine orchestration. And this theme also reminds us to be attentive to moments of opportunity. There are times when action is required, when waiting is not wisdom, but abdication. Abigail recognized such a moment and responded immediately. She did not procrastinate or second-guess herself. She saw what needed to be done and did it. And because of her decisive action at the right moment, Liv was saved and history was changed. The same principle applies to us. When God presents an opportunity to do good, to speak truth, to stand for justice, to show mercy, we should act decisively. The moment may not come again. The peace that almost wasn't David continues his journey toward kingship after this encounter. He will face more battles, more trials, more moments where anger tempts him toward violence, but he will remember Abigail. He will remember the day a woman's wisdom saved him from himself. He will remember what it felt like to be on the edge of a terrible mistake and to be pulled back by someone who cared enough to speak truth. And that memory will shape him as a leader and as a man. Abigail's actions become a quiet but pivotal moment in David's moral development. She teaches him that restraint is strength, not weakness, that listening is part of leadership, that sometimes the greatest victories are the ones we choose not to fight. That honor can be preserved without bloodshed. That wisdom spoken at the right moment can change everything. These are lessons he will need when he becomes king. Lessons about mercy and justice. Lessons about power and its proper use. Lessons about the difference between what we have the right to do and what is right to do. The story of Abigail also stands as a testament to the power of one person acting with courage and wisdom. History often remembers kings and wars, battles and conquests, the loud and the dramatic, great armies clashing, empires rising and falling, heroes performing impossible feats of strength. But sometimes it is the voice of wisdom, spoken at the right moment, in the right way, that shapes destiny most profoundly. Abigail did not lead an army. She did not build a kingdom. She did not perform miracles or receive prophecies. She simply spoke truth when it mattered. She acted with courage when courage was needed. She stood between violence and peace. And in doing so, she stopped a war before it started. How many lives did she save that day? The text tells us that David swore to kill every male in Nabal's household. Even a modest estate would have had dozens of servants, workers, shepherds, perhaps 50 people, perhaps 100. And Abigail saved them all, not with weapons or force, but with words carefully chosen and courageously spoken. Those servants went home that night, not knowing how close they came to death. Their children grew up, their families continued, all because one woman refused to accept that violence was inevitable. This should inspire us. We may never face a situation as dramatic as Abigail's. We may never have to ride out and stop an army in the wilderness, but we will face moments where our words and actions can make a difference, where courage is needed, where wisdom can change outcomes, where someone needs an advocate or an intercessor, where the easy path is silence and the right path is speaking up. In those moments, may we remember Abigail. May we remember that one person acting with courage and wisdom can change everything. Her courage was not loud. It was not performed for an audience or recorded for recognition. She did not seek fame or reward. She simply did what was right because it was right. And that courage echoed through history. It shaped a king. It saved lives. It became part of scripture, studied and celebrated for thousands of years. It reminds generation after generation that wisdom matters, that courage matters, that one person standing in the gap can make all the difference in the world. The story ends well for Abigail, but the real power of her story is not her personal happy ending. It is the principle she demonstrates that peace is possible even in situations that seem destined for violence, that wisdom can overcome wrath, that humility can achieve what pride never could, that divine timing is real and trustworthy, that intercession matters, that courage changes outcomes. These truths are as relevant today as they were 3,000 years ago in the wilderness of Judea, and they will remain relevant as long as human beings face conflict and must choose between violence and peace, between pride and humility, between revenge and restraint. May we learn from Abigail. May we cultivate her wisdom. May we develop her courage. May we trust in divine timing. May we be willing to stand in the gap when needed. And may we remember that sometimes the difference between war and peace, between tragedy and triumph, between destruction and deliverance rests in one person's willingness to do what is right at exactly the moment it matters most. There are moments in history when a single choice echoes across generations, when one act of hesitation unravels everything that came before it.